A single mother, two 5-year-old twins, one desperate phone call to a stranger they've never met. When Madison cries, "Mommy won't wake up," a billionaire CEO's world shatters. He never knew these children existed. Now he must choose: run from this impossible responsibility or become the father they desperately need. What happens next will change all their lives forever. If you believe in second chances and the power of family, type Amen in the comments below and tell us where you're watching from. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital buzzed overhead as 28-year-old Charlotte Hayes sat in the cramped examination room, clutching her worn purse against her chest. The twins, Madison and Morgan, sat on the vinyl chairs beside her, their matching blonde pigtails bouncing as they swung their small legs back and forth. Madison hummed softly while Morgan traced invisible patterns on the armrest with her tiny finger. They were only 5 years old, too young to understand why their mother's face had grown so pale over the past few months, why she sometimes doubled over in pain when she thought they weren't looking. "Doctor." Patterson entered with a manila folder, his expression carefully neutral. Charlotte had seen that look before. It was the face doctors wore when they were about to deliver news that would split your life into before and after. She reached over and placed a hand on each twin's head, drawing strength from their warmth. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, then caught himself. "Ms. Hayes, I'm afraid the results from your biopsy came back. The mass we found is malignant, stage 3 pancreatic cancer." The words hung in the air like smoke. Charlotte felt her breath catch, but she forced herself to nod calmly. Madison looked up at her with curious eyes. "Mommy, what does malig?" "It means I'm very sick, sweetie," Charlotte whispered, her voice barely holding steady. "But Mommy is going to fight very hard." Dr. Patterson continued with treatment options, survival rates, clinical trials. Charlotte heard fragments: 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. Surgery was possible but risky, given how advanced it was. Chemotherapy would buy time. The words blurred together into a nightmarish symphony of medical jargon and devastating statistics. When they left the hospital that afternoon, Charlotte held both girls' hands as they walked to the bus stop. She couldn't afford a car, could barely afford the rent on their tiny apartment in Queens. She worked double shifts at the diner, and even that wasn't enough most months. The thought of medical bills made her stomach turn, but not as much as the thought of leaving her daughters alone in this world. That night, after tucking the twins into their shared bed in the apartment's only bedroom, Charlotte sat at the kitchen table with an old shoebox. Inside were the few remnants of a life she'd tried to forget. A business card, a hotel receipt, a blurry photo from a corporate gala where she'd worked as a server 6 years ago. She pulled out the business card, now creased and faded. Vincent Chambers, CEO, Chambers Industries. Below it, a phone number she'd never had the courage to call. It had been one night, one impossible, magical night, when a wealthy executive had noticed the struggling waitress with kind eyes. He'd been charming, attentive, making her feel like someone who mattered instead of someone who cleaned up after people who mattered. Then he'd disappeared back into his world of boardrooms and penthouses, and she'd discovered weeks later that she was pregnant, with twins. She'd tried to reach him once, calling the company's main line, but she'd been transferred to an assistant who dismissed her as another person trying to scam money from a rich man. Charlotte had too much pride to fight. She'd raised her daughters alone, working herself to exhaustion, telling them their father was a good man who just didn't know they existed. Now, staring at that business card in the dim kitchen light, Charlotte made a decision. She pulled out her old cell phone, the screen cracked in 3 places, and carefully programmed the number into the contacts. Then she wrote a name next to it. Daddy. Madison wandered out of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, why are you crying? Charlotte quickly wiped her face and pulled her daughter onto her lap. I'm okay, baby. Mommy just needs you to do something very important for me. Can you be brave?" Madison nodded seriously, her little face so earnest it broke Charlotte's heart. Charlotte held up the phone. "This phone is going to stay right here on the kitchen counter. If Mommy gets too sick, if I can't wake up, or if I have to go to the hospital and can't come back right away, I need you to call this number. Can you see it? It says, 'Daddy? We have a daddy.'" Madison's eyes went wide with wonder. "You do. He just doesn't know about you yet. He's a very busy man, but he's a good person. If Mommy can't be here anymore, he'll take care of you and Morgan. Promise me you'll remember. If something happens, you call Daddy." Madison took the responsibility with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. "I promise, Mommy. I'll take care of Morgan too." Charlotte hugged her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and innocence. "I know you will, my brave girl." 3 months later, the aggressive treatment had taken its toll. Charlotte's body was failing faster than anyone had anticipated. The cancer had spread, despite the chemotherapy that left her weak and nauseous. She'd lost her job at the diner when she could no longer stand for full shifts. They were living on charity from the church and whatever government assistance she qualified for. The twins had learned to be quiet, to play games that didn't require running or noise, to tiptoe around their mother who spent most days in bed. It was a Tuesday morning in October when Madison woke to silence. The apartment was cold because they'd had to keep the heat low to save money. Morgan was still asleep beside her, curled up in a ball under their thin blanket. Madison slipped out of bed and padded into her mother's room. "Mommy?" she whispered. "Are you awake?" Charlotte lay very still in the bed, her breathing shallow and labored. Her lips had a bluish tint. Madison tried to shake her gently. "Mommy? It's morning? You need to wake up." Nothing. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped Madison's small chest. She remembered her mother's words. "If Mommy can't wake up, call Daddy." Madison ran to the kitchen, dragging a chair to the counter so she could reach the phone. Her hands trembled as she found the contact labeled Daddy and pressed the call button. Across the city in Manhattan, Vincent Chambers sat in his corner office on the 45th floor of the Chambers Tower. At 34, he'd built his father's modest real estate company into a billion-dollar empire. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his teal suit custom-tailored, his beard neatly trimmed. He was reviewing contracts when his personal cell phone rang with an unknown number. He almost declined the call, but something made him answer. "Vincent Chambers. Hello, is this Daddy?" A small, frightened voice came through the line. "Mommy won't wake up. She's not moving and her hands are really cold and I don't know what to do." Vincent's entire body went rigid. "Who is this? Where are you?" "I'm Madison. Mommy said if she doesn't wake up, I should call you. She said you're our daddy. Please, Morgan is crying and I'm scared." The world tilted. Vincent gripped the edge of his desk. "Madison, listen to me very carefully. Is there an address on any mail in your house? Can you tell me where you live?" Through tears, the little girl managed to read him an address in Queens. Vincent was already grabbing his coat, his mind racing. This had to be some kind of scam. But something about the raw terror in that child's voice cut through every cynical defense he'd built. "Madison, I need you to call 911 right now. Tell them your mother needs help. Can you do that? Then I'm coming to you as fast as I can." He hung up and ran. His assistant looked up in shock as he burst through the reception area. "Cancel everything! Everything! I don't know when I'll be back." Vincent didn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 2 at a time, 45 floors down, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and disbelief. In the garage, he jumped into his Mercedes and broke every traffic law driving to Queens. The address led him to a run-down apartment building with paint peeling from the walls. An ambulance was already there, lights flashing. He ran up 3 flights of stairs and found paramedics wheeling a stretcher out of apartment 3C. The woman on the stretcher was thin, pale, her blonde hair matted against her skull. She looked nothing like the vibrant server he vaguely remembered from years ago. Yet something in her face was familiar. 2 small girls stood in the doorway, identical twins with blonde hair and blue eyes, wearing mismatched pajamas. The one in pink suddenly broke away from a police officer and ran to Vincent. "Daddy, you came for us." Vincent looked down at this child, who was wrapping her arms around his legs, then at her identical sister being comforted by another officer. His world was spinning. This couldn't be real, but the paramedic was asking him questions. "Are you family?" "Sir, she's critical. We need to get her to Memorial Hospital immediately." Vincent looked at the little girl clinging to him. "Yes, I'm family. I'm coming with you." In the ambulance, as Madison held her unconscious mother's hand and Morgan sobbed quietly, Vincent stared at these 2 children who looked nothing like him but everything like each other. How was this possible? Why had he never known? And why, looking at their tear-stained faces, did he feel something crack open in his chest that felt suspiciously like responsibility? Charlotte's eyes fluttered open briefly. She saw Vincent, and the faintest smile crossed her lips. "You came," she breathed. "Thank you. They're yours. Take care of them, please." Then her eyes closed again as machines around her began to beep in alarm. Memorial Hospital's emergency ward smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Vincent sat in the waiting area with 2 5-year-old girls who kept looking at him with a mixture of hope and fear. Madison, the brave one who'd made the call, sat close to him, her small hand occasionally reaching out to touch his arm as if to make sure he was real. Morgan, quieter and more withdrawn, clutched a worn stuffed rabbit and stared at the floor. They'd been waiting for 2 hours while doctors worked on Charlotte. Vincent had made 1 phone call to his lawyer. "Andrew, I need a paternity test. Immediately, rush it. I don't care what it costs." Now he was stuck in this surreal limbo, trying to make small talk with children he didn't know might be his. "Are you really our daddy?" Morgan finally asked, her voice so small he had to lean down to hear her. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I'm going to stay here until we figure everything out. Mommy said you're a good man," Madison offered. "She said you didn't know about us because she couldn't find you." Guilt, sharp and unexpected, pierced through Vincent's confusion. If these girls were his, how had he not known? What kind of man was he that a woman had carried and raised his children alone while he built his empire? He thought back to that night 6 years ago. There had been a charity gala. His company had been the main sponsor. He'd noticed one of the servers, a young woman with a warm smile, who'd been kind to an elderly couple having trouble with their meals. They'd talked during her break. She'd been funny, real, different from the socialites who usually surrounded him. They'd ended up in his hotel room. He'd left early the next morning for a business trip to Tokyo. He'd never gotten her last name, never followed up. She'd been a pleasant memory, nothing more. Now that pleasant memory was fighting for her life, and 2 little girls were looking at him like he was their only hope. Dr. Patterson emerged from the emergency room, his scrubs dotted with blood. Vincent stood immediately, and both girls grabbed his hands. "Mr. Chambers, Miss Hayes is stable for now, but barely. The cancer has progressed significantly. She's in multi-organ failure. We've managed to get her on life support, but I need to be honest with you. Without aggressive intervention, she has days, maybe a week at most. Even with intervention, her chances are slim." "What kind of intervention?" Vincent asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "There's an experimental treatment program at Sloan Kettering. It's shown promise for pancreatic cancer, but it's expensive and there's no guarantee of insurance coverage. We're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars." Vincent didn't hesitate. Do it, whatever she needs. I'll cover all costs. Transfer her to Sloan Kettering immediately and make sure she gets the best team they have. Dr. Patterson's eyebrows rose. Sir, I should mention that Miss Hayes has substantial medical debt already. The financial burden will be handled by me. Just save her life. While arrangements were made for Charlotte's transfer, a nurse brought colouring books and crayons for the twins. Vincent watched them colour in silence, their small faces serious with concentration. Madison was colouring a picture of a house with 4 stick figures in front. She pointed to each one as she added details. This is Mommy, this is me, this is Morgan, and this is you, Daddy. This is our family. Vincent felt something twist in his chest. Madison, we still don't know for sure if I'm your father. Mommy doesn't lie, Madison said simply, and you came when I called. That's what daddies do. It was that simple for her. He'd shown up, therefore he was Dad. Children had an uncomplicated way of defining relationships that adults had lost somewhere along the way. Vincent pulled out his phone and made another call, this one to his assistant. Sarah, I need you to do something unusual. Find me a family lawyer, the best one. And I need emergency temporary guardianship papers drawn up. Also, I'm going to need my penthouse prepared for children. 2 5-year-old girls. Everything they might need. Beds, clothes, toys. I don't care what it costs. Have it done by tonight. Sarah, who'd worked for him for 5 years and had never heard him mention children, managed to keep the shock out of her voice. Right away, Mr. Chambers. Anything else? Yes. Clear my schedule for the next month. Everything. If anyone asks, I have a family emergency. After hanging up, Vincent looked down at the girls. Are you two hungry? When was the last time you ate? The twins exchanged glances. Morgan spoke up. Yesterday morning, Mommy made us cereal, but then she got too sick. Vincent's jaw clenched. These children had been alone with their unconscious mother for over 24 hours, too scared to leave her side. Come on, let's get you some real food. The hospital cafeteria was mostly empty at 3 in the afternoon. Vincent loaded a tray with chicken nuggets, fruit, juice boxes, and a sandwich for himself that he knew he wouldn't eat. The girls attacked the food like they were starving, which they probably were. He noticed how thin they were under their too small clothes, how their shoes were worn through at the soles. Do you girls go to school? He asked. Madison nodded, her mouth full of chicken. She swallowed. We go to public school 112. But Mommy kept us home this week because she was feeling bad. What grade are you in? Kindergarten. We're in Miss Wilson's class. She's nice. She lets us sit together. Vincent made mental notes. School. They'd need to be enrolled somewhere. Probably not their current school if they were going to be living in Manhattan with him. His mind was racing ahead, making plans, solving problems. That's what he did. He identified obstacles and eliminated them. But these weren't business problems. These were children. His children, maybe. His phone buzzed. A text from Andrew, his lawyer. Can have DNA results in 72 hours with rush processing. Need samples from all parties. Vincent looked at the twins, now sharing a cookie and giggling over some private joke. 72 hours, to know for certain if his entire life had just changed. But watching Madison carefully break the cookie in half, so her sister got the bigger piece, watching Morgan wipe chocolate from Madison's chin with her napkin, something in him already knew the truth. These girls were his. He could feel it in the way Madison had trusted him instantly, in the way Morgan's eyes were the exact shade of blue as his mother's. Charlotte was transferred to Sloan Kettering that evening. Vincent arranged for the girls to see her briefly before the medical team started the experimental treatment. Charlotte was awake, barely, her eyes glassy with pain medication. She reached out trembling hands to her daughters. "Be good for your daddy," she whispered. "I love you both so much. I'm so sorry I can't." Her voice broke. "Mommy's going to get better," Madison said with fierce determination. "Daddy's here now. He's going to fix everything." Charlotte's eyes met Vincent's over the girls' heads. "Thank you," she mouthed. Vincent nodded. "Fight," he told her. "Fight for them. I'll take care of everything else." As the nurses ushered them out, Vincent took both girls' hands and led them to his car. It was getting dark. They drove from the Upper East Side to his penthouse in Tribeca, the city lights blurring past the windows. The twins were quiet, pressed together in the back seat, Morgan's head on Madison's shoulder. When they arrived at his building, the doorman's eyes widened at the sight of his usually solitary boss with two small children. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. Vincent's mind was already racing ahead to the logistics. How did one care for 5-year-olds? He'd never even held a baby. His relationships had been carefully curated to avoid exactly this kind of complication. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. Sarah had worked miracles. The spare bedroom now contained 2 small beds with princess sheets, a toy chest overflowing with dolls and games, and a bookshelf lined with children's books. The girls stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "This is all for us," Morgan whispered. "It's your room, for as long as you need it." Madison ran to one of the beds and bounced on it, her first moment of pure childhood joy since that morning. "Morgan, it's so soft. It's like sleeping on a cloud." But Morgan's face crumpled. "I want Mommy." Vincent found himself kneeling in front of this crying child, having absolutely no idea what to do. "I know, sweetheart. Your mom is getting the best care possible. The doctors are going to do everything they can." "But what if she dies?" Morgan sobbed. "What if we're alone?" Madison came over and wrapped her arms around her sister. "We're not alone. We have Daddy now." Vincent looked at these 2 little girls, so brave, so scared, so completely dependent on him. And he made a decision. Even if the DNA test came back negative, even if through some cosmic joke they weren't his, he wasn't going to abandon them. Not now, not ever. They'd already been through too much. "You're not alone," he said firmly. "I promise you. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out together." That night, after helping them brush their teeth with brand new toothbrushes and reading them 3 stories, Vincent sat on the floor between their beds. Madison had fallen asleep holding his hand. Morgan kept waking up crying for her mother. Each time, Vincent would whisper that it was okay, that he was there, that they were safe. Around midnight, when both girls were finally sleeping soundly, Vincent walked out onto his balcony overlooking the city. His phone had 73 missed calls and twice as many emails. None of it mattered. He thought about Charlotte, fighting for her life in a hospital bed. He thought about how she'd raised these children alone, how she'd probably suffered in silence because of his negligence. He pulled out his phone and called Andrew again. "Add something to those guardianship papers. I want to establish a trust for Charlotte Hayes. Medical expenses, living expenses when she recovers, everything. And look into the legality of putting her hospital debts into my name. Vincent, are you sure? You don't even know if I'm sure. And Andrew, start adoption paperwork too, just in case. I want everything ready." After hanging up, Vincent looked back through the glass doors at the 2 small forms in their beds. Tomorrow he'd face the DNA test. Tomorrow he'd deal with the business he'd abandoned. Tomorrow he'd figure out how to actually parent these children. But tonight, he was just a man who'd been given an unexpected second chance at something he'd never known he wanted. A family. The DNA results came back on a Thursday afternoon. Vincent was sitting in Dr. Patterson's office with a social worker present as required by law. The envelope sat on the desk between them, innocuous and life-altering. Vincent's hands were steady as he reached for it, but his heart was racing. "Before you open that," the social worker, Mrs. Chen said gently, "I want you to know that regardless of the results, we're going to ensure those children are cared for. If you're not the biological father, we'll work with family services to find appropriate placement." "That won't be necessary," Vincent said quietly. "Open it." He pulled out the paper and scanned the technical jargon. His eyes found the relevant line. Probability of paternity, 99, 98%. He was Madison and Morgan's biological father. There it was, scientific proof that his life had irrevocably changed 3 days ago. He set the paper down carefully. "I want full custody, immediately." Mrs. Chen smiled. "We figured as much, given the temporary guardianship papers your lawyer filed. But Mr. Chambers, parenting isn't like running a business. These girls have been through trauma. Their mother is critically ill. They're going to need patience, consistency, and a lot of emotional support." "I understand. That's why I've already hired a family therapist to work with them and with me. I've also enrolled them in Riverside Montessori for the fall, pending your approval. And I've arranged for a nanny with early childhood education experience to help during the transition." Mrs. Chen looked impressed despite herself. "You've been busy?" "I don't do anything halfway." Vincent folded the DNA results and slipped them into his jacket pocket. "When can I tell them?" "That depends. How is their mother doing?" Vincent's expression darkened. "Not well. The experimental treatment is aggressive. She's been in and out of consciousness for the past 3 days. But the doctors say if she can survive the next week, there's a chance. Then perhaps wait to discuss the permanence of the situation. Let them process one thing at a time." But the twins had already figured things out in the way that perceptive children do. That evening, when Vincent returned to the penthouse, Madison was waiting by the door. "You got the test back, didn't you?" Vincent hung up his coat, buying time. "How did you know?" "You've been nervous all day. You kept checking your phone. And you bought us those new shoes even though we already have shoes." Madison crossed her small arms. "You were checking if we're really yours." Vincent knelt down, so he was at eye level with her. Morgan appeared from the bedroom, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Both girls looked at him with identical expressions of anxious hope. He pulled the folded paper from his pocket and showed them, pointing to the keyline. "This says that I am definitely, scientifically, 100% your father. You're my daughters, both of you." Madison's face split into a radiant smile. She launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I knew it! I told Morgan! I said Mummy wouldn't lie!" Morgan was more cautious. "Does this mean we can stay here?" "Even if Mummy—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Vincent gathered both girls into his arms. "This means you stay here forever. This is your home now. I'm your dad, and nothing is ever going to change that." Morgan began to cry, but these were different tears. Relief. She burrowed into his chest. "I was so scared you were going to leave us like everyone else." "Everyone else?" Vincent pulled back to look at her. Madison explained quietly. "Mummy's family didn't talk to her anymore after she had us. She said they were mad because you weren't around. And Mummy's friend Karen used to help sometimes, but she moved away last year. It's just been the 3 of us for a really long time." Vincent felt a fresh wave of guilt and anger. At himself, at Charlotte's family, at the circumstances that had left these children so isolated. "Well, you're not alone anymore. You have me, and soon you're going to meet your grandmother, my mother. She's been traveling, but she's flying back this weekend specifically to meet you." "We have a grandma." Morgan's eyes went wide. "You do, and she's very excited. I talked to her yesterday, and she may have already bought out half of FAO Schwartz." That night, they video-called Charlotte in her hospital room. She looked terrible, grey and thin, but her eyes lit up when she saw the girls on screen. "My babies, are you being good?" "Daddy got the test," Madison announced. "It says we're his for real." Charlotte's eyes found Vincent's behind the girls. "Thank you. she whispered, "for believing me, for taking care of them." "Charlotte," Vincent said carefully, "when you get better, we need to talk. About everything. About why you didn't tell me. About how we move forward." "When I get better," Charlotte agreed, though her voice suggested she didn't believe in that possibility. After the call ended, Vincent helped the girls get ready for bed. They had a routine now. Bath time at 7:30, then pajamas, then story time. Tonight Morgan chose The Velveteen Rabbit from the bookshelf. Vincent read it, stumbling occasionally over the emotional parts, while both girls snuggled against him on Madison's bed. When he finished, Madison looked up at him seriously. "Daddy!" "The rabbit becomes real because someone loves him enough. That's like us, right? We became real to you because now you love us?" Vincent's throat tightened. Did he love them? 3 days ago he hadn't known they existed. But looking at their faces, feeling the weight of their trust in him, he realized that yes, somehow in the span of 72 hours, these two small humans had become the most important things in his world. "Yes," he said softly, "that's exactly like you." The next morning, Vincent did something he'd never done in his entire career. He called an emergency board meeting and announced he was stepping back from day-to-day operations. His vice president, Marcus, would handle most of his responsibilities. Vincent would remain CEO in name, but he was taking an extended leave to deal with family matters. The board was predictably shocked. Vincent Chambers didn't take vacations, let alone extended leaves. But when he mentioned family emergency and left no room for argument, they accepted it. After the meeting, Marcus cornered him in the hallway. "Vincent, what's really going on? You've never mentioned family before." "I just found out I have twin 5-year-old daughters. Their mother is dying of cancer, so yes, Marcus, I'd say that qualifies as an emergency." Marcus's jaw dropped. "You have kids? Since when?" "Since apparently 6 years ago. I just found out last week. Look, I need you to hold down the fort. I have to figure out how to be a father, and I have to do it fast." And that afternoon, Vincent's mother, Patricia Chambers, arrived at the penthouse. She was an elegant woman in her late 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. She took one look at the twins and burst into tears. "Oh, Vincent, oh my word, they're beautiful. They look just like you did at that age." The girls, initially shy, warmed up when Patricia pulled out presents. Not just toys, but thoughtful gifts, books, art supplies, a kaleidoscope for Madison, who loved patterns, a music box for Morgan, who hummed constantly. Patricia had done her research. Over coffee, while the girls played, Patricia confronted her son. "Why didn't she tell you?" "You had a right to know. She tried. I wasn't available. I was too busy building an empire to notice I'd left casualties behind." Vincent's voice was bitter. "I've been a father for 6 years, and I've provided nothing. No support, no presence, nothing." "You didn't know." "That's not an excuse. I should have tried harder to find her after that night. I should have made sure. Instead, I wrote her off as a pleasant evening and moved on with my life." Patricia reached over and squeezed her son's hand. "Vincent, you can't change the past. But you can make sure the future is different. Those girls need you now. Not the you that might have been, but the you that is. Can you be that for them?" Vincent watched Madison carefully explaining the rules of some elaborate game to Morgan, who was listening with rapt attention. "I have to be. They don't have anyone else. They have you, and they have me, and they have each other. That's more than nothing. That's family." That weekend, Charlotte took a turn for the worse. Vincent got the call at 6 in the morning. Septic shock, organs failing, she was being moved to ICU. He left the girls with his mother and rushed to the hospital. When he arrived, Charlotte was surrounded by machines, tubes running in and out of her body. She looked like a ghost. Dr. Ramirez, the oncologist handling her case, pulled Vincent aside. Mr. Chambers, her body is shutting down. The experimental treatment was too much for her weakened state. We can keep her comfortable, but I think it's time to discuss end-of-life care." "No," Vincent said it flatly. "There has to be something else. Another treatment. Another trial." "Mr. Chambers, I understand this is difficult, but you don't understand anything. Those girls just got their father. They can't lose their mother too. There has to be something." Dr. Ramirez's expression softened. "There is one option. It's extreme. A complete blood transfusion combined with a new immunotherapy drug. It's only been tested on 3 patients, all of whom were terminal. 1 survived. But the procedure is dangerous, and there's a high likelihood it will kill her faster than the cancer would." "What's the survival rate if we do nothing?" "Days, maybe a week. And with the procedure, if she survives the procedure itself, maybe 20% chance of remission. But Mr. Chambers, that's if she survives the procedure, which is a big if." Vincent looked through the window at Charlotte. She was only 28 years old. She should have decades ahead of her. "Does she know about this option?" "We discussed it before she became unconscious. She said to ask you." Vincent felt the weight of that decision. Charlotte had put her life in his hands. The woman he'd spent one night with 6 years ago trusted him to choose whether she lived or died. He thought about Madison's fierce determination that her mother would get better. He thought about Morgan's quiet fear of being alone. "Do it," he said. "Give her the best possible chance, whatever the risk." The procedure was scheduled for the next morning. Vincent brought the girls to say goodbye, just in case. Charlotte was conscious, barely. She held each of their hands. "Mommy's going to have a big treatment tomorrow," Vincent explained gently. "The doctors are going to try something new. It might make her better, but it's going to be hard, really hard." "You have to fight, Mommy," Madison said fiercely. "You have to. Daddy's here now, and we can all be together. We can be a real family." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Baby, families come in all shapes. Even if Mommy can't stay, you'll still have Daddy and Grandma Patricia and each other. You'll be okay." "But we want you," Morgan whispered. "I know, sweet girl. I want that too, so I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight so hard." After they left the hospital, Vincent took the girls to Central Park. It was a beautiful late October day, the leaves turning gold and red. They fed ducks, rode the carousel, ate ice cream. Vincent tried to give them a perfect day, just in case it was the last one before everything changed. That night, he tucked them in and sat between their beds, like he'd done every night since they came to stay with him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you both to know something. You're not alone. You'll never be alone again. I promise you that." Madison reached out and took his hand. "We know, Daddy. That's why Mommy's going to make it. Because now she has something to live for, too. She has you." Vincent sat there long after both girls fell asleep, thinking about the impossible tangle of guilt, responsibility, and something deeper he was only beginning to recognize. His life had been orderly, controlled, successful. Now it was chaos. But watching these 2 children sleep, trusting him completely with their safety and their hearts, he realized he wouldn't change it. Not for anything. Tomorrow, Charlotte would fight for her life, and Vincent would be there, holding steady, because that's what fathers did. That's what family meant. And against all odds, that's what they were becoming. The waiting room outside the ICU smelled like industrial coffee and fear. Vincent had been there for 7 hours, while Charlotte underwent the experimental procedure. His mother sat beside him, knitting something small and pink. The twins were with a babysitter back at the penthouse, spared from this particular agony. Every time the doors swung open, Vincent's heart lurched, expecting Dr. Ramirez with devastating news. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Vincent tried to work on his laptop but couldn't focus. He tried to read news articles on his phone, but the words blurred together. Patricia kept knitting, the steady click of needles the only consistent sound besides the wall clock ticking away seconds that felt like hours. Other families came and went, some leaving with tears of joy, others with the hollow eyes of grief. Vincent watched them all, wondering which category he'd fall into. Around noon, a nurse brought updates. Charlotte was still in surgery. Vitals were holding. That was all they could say. Vincent thanked her and went back to pacing. He'd walked the same 10-foot path so many times he'd probably worn a groove in the linoleum. "Sit down," Patricia finally said. "You're making me nervous." "I can't. If I sit still, I'll lose my mind." "Then tell me about the girls. How are they really doing with all this?" Vincent stopped pacing and sank into the chair beside his mother. "Madison is trying to be brave. She keeps telling Morgan that everything will be fine, that Mommy is strong, but I heard her crying in the bathroom last night. She thought I was asleep." "And Morgan?" "Morgan is terrified. She barely eats. She has nightmares every night. Last night she asked me what happens if both Charlotte and I die. Who would take care of them then?" Vincent's voice cracked. "She's 5 years old, and she's planning for worst-case scenarios." Patricia reached over and squeezed his hand. "They'll be okay. They have you now. That makes all the difference." When the doctor finally emerged at 3 in the afternoon, his surgical mask was pulled down and his expression was carefully neutral. Vincent stood so fast he nearly knocked over his untouched coffee. Patricia set down her knitting and reached for his hand. "Mr. Chambers, Charlotte made it through the procedure. Her vitals are stable, which, frankly, is better than we expected." Dr. Ramirez paused, and Vincent could see him choosing his words carefully. "The next 72 hours are critical. Her body has been through tremendous trauma. If she can fight off infection, if her organs can recover from the shock, then we'll start to see if the treatment is actually working against the cancer. But I need you to understand, we're not out of the woods, not even close." "But she's alive." Vincent's voice was hoarse. "She's alive, and that's something. You can see her, but only for a few minutes. She's heavily sedated and won't be conscious." Charlotte looked even more fragile than before, if that was possible. New tubes ran into her arms, monitors beeped steadily, and her skin had a translucent quality that made her seem not quite real. Vincent approached the bed slowly, unsure of what to say to this unconscious woman who had turned his entire world upside down. "The girls are doing well," he said quietly, feeling slightly foolish talking to someone who couldn't hear him. "Madison asked me this morning if you like pancakes because she wants to make you breakfast when you come home. Morgan drew you a picture of all 4 of us holding hands. They're convinced you're going to make it, and I—" He paused, struggling with emotions he'd spent a lifetime learning to control. "I need you to prove them right. They need their mother, and I think I need to understand why you never told me, why you carried this alone for so long." Charlotte didn't respond, but one of the monitors showed a slight increase in heart rate. The nurse noticed. "She might be able to hear you on some level. Keep talking. It could help." So Vincent talked. He told Charlotte about the past week, about how Madison had taken charge of teaching him how to braid hair, even though his first attempts had been disasters. About how Morgan hummed herself to sleep every night with a song Charlotte must have sung to them. About how his mother had cried when she met them, saying they had his smile. About how terrified he was that he'd failed them, that he didn't know how to be what they needed. When visiting hours ended, Patricia drove him back to the penthouse. The girls ambushed him at the door, Madison launching herself at his legs, while Morgan hung back, anxious. "Is Mommy okay?" Morgan asked in a small voice. Vincent knelt down and pulled both girls into a hug. "Mommy made it through her treatment. She's sleeping now, but the doctors say that's good. Her body needs rest to get stronger. It's going to take time, but she fought really hard today. Can we see her tomorrow?" Madison asked. "Maybe in a few days. Right now she needs to rest without any visitors. But I told her about both of you, and the nurse said she could hear me, so Mommy knows we're all rooting for her." That week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Vincent established new routines with the girls. Breakfast at 7, then learning activities that the nanny, Mrs. Rodriguez, had prepared. Lunch, then quiet time while he took business calls that he could barely focus on. Afternoons in the park or at museums, anything to keep the girls distracted from asking when they could see Mommy. Dinner together, then bath time and stories. He learned that Madison was fearless and adventurous, always pushing boundaries, asking questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether Mommy would remember them if she slept too long. He learned that Morgan was thoughtful and cautious, needing extra reassurance, sometimes waking 3 times a night, crying for Charlotte. He learned that being a father meant existing in a constant state of uncertainty while projecting complete confidence. It meant saying, "Mommy's going to be fine," while having no idea if that was true. It meant learning to braid hair from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning, because Madison insisted her hair had to look perfect like Mommy does it for school. He learned patience he didn't know he possessed. When Madison spilled an entire glass of orange juice across his laptop during a video conference call, he found himself laughing instead of yelling. When Morgan had a meltdown in the grocery store because they didn't have the right kind of crackers that Charlotte always bought, he sat on the floor with her until she calmed down, ignoring the stares of other shoppers. He was learning that love meant showing up even when you had no idea what you were doing. On day 2 of Charlotte's recovery, Madison asked the question Vincent had been dreading. They were eating dinner, chicken nuggets again, because that's all he knew how to make that they'd actually eat, when Madison set down her fork and looked at him with those serious blue eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy going to die?" Morgan froze, her nugget halfway to her mouth. Vincent set down his own fork carefully, buying time to figure out how to answer. "What did you tell a 5-year-old about mortality? How did you balance honesty with hope?" "Mommy is very sick," he said slowly. "The doctors are doing everything they can to make her better. And your Mommy is the strongest, bravest person I know. She's fighting really hard." "But that's not an answer," Madison pressed. "Anna's Mommy at school said sometimes people die even when doctors try to help them. Is that true?" "Yes, that's true. But Madison, I need you to listen to me. Your Mommy has beaten every single odds so far. Everyone said she wouldn't survive the treatment, and she did. Everyone said she'd never wake up, and she did. Your Mommy doesn't give up, ever, and we're not giving up on her either." Morgan's eyes filled with tears. "But what if she does die? What happens to us?" Vincent moved his chair closer and pulled both girls onto his lap, something he'd gotten surprisingly good at over the past week. "If something happens to Mommy, which I don't think it will, you still have me, and Grandma Patricia, and Mrs. Rodriguez. You have a whole family now who loves you and will take care of you. You're never going to be alone again. I promise you that. But we want Mommy," Morgan sobbed into his chest. "I know, baby, I know. Me too." On day 4 of Charlotte's recovery, Dr. Ramirez called with news. Her organs are responding, kidney function is improving, liver enzymes are coming down. "We're not seeing the infection we were worried about. Mr. Chambers, I think she's actually turning a corner." Vincent closed his eyes and leaned against the window of his office. "When can she have visitors?" "Tomorrow, if she continues improving. Short visits only. But Mr. Chambers, I want to manage expectations. Even if she survives this, recovery will take months, possibly a year or more before she's back to anything resembling normal function. The road ahead is long. But there is a road. That's what matters." That evening, Vincent sat the girls down for a serious talk. "Tomorrow we're going to visit Mommy, who... But I need you both to understand something. She's going to look different. She's very thin and tired, and she has tubes and machines helping her. It might be scary, but Mommy is still Mommy. Can you be brave?" Morgan's lip trembled. "Will she know us?" "Of course she will. She's been thinking about you every single day." The next morning, they went to the hospital armed with Morgan's drawing and a card Madison had made that said, "Get well soon, Mommy," in crayon, with approximately 17 hearts. When they entered Charlotte's room, both girls froze. Charlotte was awake, propped up on pillows, and when she saw them, tears streamed down her face. "My babies," she whispered, her voice raspy from the breathing tube they'd only removed that morning. Madison recovered first, climbing carefully onto the bed and curling into Charlotte's side. Morgan followed, more tentative, but once she was in her mother's arms, she began to cry. "I missed you so much, Mommy. I missed you too, both of you. Every single second." Charlotte looked up at Vincent, who stood at the foot of the bed. "Thank you for everything, for bringing them, for taking care of them." "They're my daughters," Vincent said simply. "It's not something you need to thank me for." Over the next 2 weeks, Charlotte slowly improved. The experimental treatment, combined with the blood transfusion, seemed to be working. The cancer markers in her blood were dropping. She wasn't cured, not by any stretch, but she was stable enough to start talking about discharge plans. That's when things got complicated. Charlotte's hospital social worker brought up the elephant in the room during a family meeting. Vincent, Charlotte, and Patricia sat in a small conference room while the girls played in the hospital's family lounge. "Ms. Hayes, you're going to need significant care when you're discharged. Months of physical therapy, ongoing monitoring, help with daily activities. Your previous residence wasn't suitable even before your illness. Have you thought about where you'll go?" Charlotte looked down at her hands. "I don't have anywhere. I lost my apartment when I couldn't pay rent. Everything I owned fit in 2 garbage bags." Patricia spoke up before Vincent could. "She'll come stay with us, of course. The penthouse has more than enough room, and the girls are already there. It makes sense." "Mom!" Vincent started, but Charlotte cut him off. "I can't accept that. You've already done so much, paid my medical bills, taken care of my daughters. I can't impose on you anymore." "It's not an imposition," Vincent said carefully. "The girls need you, and you need support. This isn't charity, Charlotte. It's practical. We need to figure out how to co-parent anyway. This gives us time to work out the details while you recover." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "You must hate me for not telling you, for keeping them from you all these years." Vincent was silent for a long moment. "I don't hate you. I'm angry, yes. I'm angry that you struggled alone. I'm angry that I missed 5 years of their lives. But I'm also angry at myself for being so unavailable that you felt you couldn't reach me. There's plenty of anger to go round, but hate? No. You gave me 2 incredible daughters, and you kept them safe when I wasn't there to help. That's not something to hate." "I tried to tell you," Charlotte said quietly, "right after I found out I was pregnant. I called your company. They transferred me to some assistant who laughed and said rich men get calls from women claiming pregnancy all the time. She said if I was looking for money, I should try someone more gullible. I was humiliated. I figured if you'd wanted to find me, you would have. I thought maybe that night meant nothing to you." Vincent felt sick. "What was the assistant's name?" "I don't remember. It was 6 years ago. Does it matter?" It mattered to Vincent. Someone on his staff had dismissed the mother of his children as a gold digger, and he was going to find out who. But that was a problem for later. "Come stay with us, at least until you're stronger. Then we can figure out something permanent." Charlotte agreed, mostly because she didn't have a choice. 2 days later, Vincent brought her home to the penthouse. The girls had made a "Welcome Home" banner that stretched across the living room. Patricia had prepared the second guest room with a hospital bed and all the equipment Charlotte might need. Mrs. Rodriguez had made soup. That first evening was awkward. Charlotte sat in the recliner Vincent had purchased specifically for her recovery, while the girls showed her their new room, their new toys, their new life. She smiled and praised everything, but Vincent could see the pain in her eyes. This was her worst nightmare, being dependent on a man she barely knew, watching him raise her children in a luxury she could never provide. After the girls went to bed, Charlotte and Vincent sat in the living room nursing tea. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Charlotte spoke. "I need to understand something. Why are you doing all this? The medical bills alone must be costing you a fortune. The girls, I understand, they're yours. But me? Why help me?" Vincent considered his answer carefully. 6 years ago, I was careless. I took something wonderful, a connection with someone genuine, and I threw it away because I was too focused on building my empire. You paid the price for my negligence, you and the girls. I can't fix the past, but I can make sure the future is different. And practically speaking, those girls need their mother. You're not an obligation or a burden. You're part of the package. I'm going to pay you back every penny. I'll get a job when I'm better, set up a payment plan. Charlotte, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. This isn't about debt. This is about family. My daughter's mother is family, whether we like it or not. Charlotte laughed, a small broken sound. That's the most reluctant family declaration I've ever heard. I'm not good at this, Vincent admitted. The feelings part. I've spent my whole adult life in boardrooms, making decisions based on logic and profit margins. This is all new territory. Well, you're doing better than you think. Madison told me you learned how to make French toast just because it's her favorite. And Morgan said you sit with her until she falls asleep every night because she's scared of the dark. That's just basic parenting, isn't it? Basic parenting is showing up. Everything else is love. Charlotte set down her tea. They adore you, you know. In 1 week you became the center of their world. That's not something you can fake or buy. That's real. Vincent felt uncomfortable with the praise. I'm just doing what anyone would do. No. Most men, confronted with instant fatherhood and a dying woman's children, would have run. You stayed. You fought for us. That matters, Vincent. More than you know. Over the next month, an unexpected thing happened. The 4 of them became a family. Not in the traditional sense, and certainly not without complications, but a family nonetheless. Charlotte slowly regained strength. She could walk with a cane by week 3. By week 4, she was helping the girls with simple activities, though she tired easily. Her cancer markers continued to drop, defying all odds. Vincent and Charlotte developed a co-parenting relationship that was surprisingly functional. They had dinner together every night, discussing the girls' day, planning activities, making decisions jointly. Patricia visited frequently, becoming the grandmother the girls had never had. Mrs. Rodriguez provided stability and routine. The nanny's teenage daughter, Sophia, started babysitting occasionally, giving the adults rare moments of peace. It was almost Thanksgiving when the cracks started to show. Charlotte had an appointment with Dr. Ramirez for her 6-week scan. The results would show if the cancer was truly in remission or if it had just been temporarily beaten back. Vincent insisted on going with her. The waiting room at Sloan Kettering was full of people with haunted eyes. Vincent held Charlotte's hand without thinking about it, an automatic gesture of support. When Dr. Ramirez called them back, Vincent felt Charlotte's hand trembling in his. Dr. Ramirez pulled up the scans on his computer. I'm going to be honest. When we started this treatment, I gave you a 5% chance of surviving the procedure, much less responding to it. Ms. Hayes, I'm looking at these scans, and I'm having trouble believing they're yours. Charlotte gripped Vincent's hand so hard it hurt. What does that mean? It means the tumors are gone, not shrinking. Gone. Your blood work is normal, By every measure we have, you are cancer-free." Dr. Ramirez smiled. "I've been an oncologist for 20 years, and I've never seen a response this complete. You're a medical miracle, Ms. Hayes." Charlotte burst into tears. Vincent found himself crying too, which was mortifying and wonderful at the same time. They sat in that office and cried together while Dr. Ramirez tactfully left to give them privacy. When they finally composed themselves, Charlotte looked at Vincent with wonder. "I'm going to live. I'm actually going to live to see my girls grow up." "You are, and they're going to be so happy." But on the drive home, reality set in. Charlotte stared out the window at the city passing by. "Everything changes now, doesn't it?" "What do you mean?" "I was dying. You took us in because I was dying, and the girls needed someone. But now I'm not dying. I'm going to recover. I'll be able to work again, get my own place. The girls can come back to me." Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know." "I never thought I'd have to make that choice. Vincent, you've built a life with them. They love you. They love this penthouse and Patricia and their fancy school. How can I take them back to struggling and uncertainty when you can give them everything? They don't need everything. They need their mother. They need you." "Ah, but they need you too now. And I can't." Charlotte's voice broke. "I can't afford to give them what you can. I'll be working 2 jobs just to afford a decent apartment. They'd go from private school to public school, from abundance to just getting by. What kind of mother chooses that for her children?" They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they got back to the penthouse, the girls ambushed them with hugs. "What did the doctor say? Is Mommy all better?" Charlotte knelt down, wincing only slightly, and pulled both girls into her arms. "Mommy's cancer is all gone. The doctors say I'm going to be completely healthy." Madison and Morgan screamed with joy and danced around the living room. Patricia emerged from the kitchen where she'd been stress baking and burst into happy tears. Mrs. Rodriguez called her family to share the good news. It was a celebration, pure and joyful. But that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Vincent stood in his study, staring out at the city lights and facing a truth he'd been avoiding. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, he'd fallen into an accidental rhythm with Charlotte. They weren't a couple, not in any romantic sense, but they were partners. They made decisions together, laughed at the same things, finished each other's sentences when talking about the girls. He'd gotten used to her quiet presence in the evenings after the twins went to bed, to her wry observations about his terrible attempts at cooking, to the way she made him think about things beyond profit margins and market share. And now she was leaving. Not immediately, but eventually, because of course she was. Why would she stay dependent on a man she barely knew? She was young, capable, and cancer-free. She'd rebuild her life, and the girls would be split between 2 homes, 2 parents, 2 worlds. The thought made something in his chest ache. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a robe. "Can't sleep either." "Just thinking." "About custody arrangements, because we should probably talk about that. I've been looking up laws, and typically fathers get every other weekend and 1 weeknight." "No!" Vincent turned from the window. "That's not acceptable." Charlotte blinked. "Excuse me. Every other weekend, 1 weeknight? Charlotte, I'm not some divorced dad who gets visitation with his kids. I've been their primary parent for 6 weeks. I know their routines, their fears, what makes them laugh. I'm not going to be reduced to a part-time father." "Then what are you suggesting? Because I'm their mother. I carried them, raised them alone for 5 years, and I'm not giving up custody just because you have money." "I'm not asking you to. I'm saying we need to find a better solution than splitting them between 2 homes." Vincent ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "They need stability. They need both of us. Maybe you should just stay here." "Stay here? As what? Your live-in ex-one-night stand who you tolerate because she birthed your children?" Charlotte's voice rose. "I have pride, Vincent. I can't just be your charity case forever. You're not a charity case, you're—" He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. What was Charlotte to him? You're important. To the girls. To this family we've somehow built. Don't blow it up just because you're too proud to accept help. It's not about pride. It's about dignity. About being able to look my daughters in the eye and tell them their mother isn't just some woman their rich father took pity on. They stared at each other across the study, both breathing hard, the tension crackling between them. Finally, Charlotte spoke more quietly. I'll stay through the holidays. Give me that time to get stronger, to figure out my next steps. But Vincent, I can't stay here long term. This isn't my world. I don't belong in penthouses and private schools. Maybe that world needs changing then, Vincent said, but Charlotte had already left the room. The holidays arrived with complicated joy. The girls were ecstatic to have both parents together. They made elaborate decorations, baked cookies, watched Christmas movies. Patricia hosted Thanksgiving dinner with all the traditional trimmings. Charlotte was strong enough to help cook, though Vincent noticed she tired easily and often disappeared to rest. On Christmas morning, Madison and Morgan woke at dawn, racing into the living room to find presents overflowing from under the tree. Vincent had gone overboard, he knew, but watching their faces light up was worth every penny. Charlotte gave them each a handmade photo album filled with pictures from their first 5 years before Vincent. He watched her present these albums and saw the message underneath. I was here first. I matter too. Later, when the girls were napping after the excitement, Charlotte found Vincent in the kitchen cleaning up wrapping paper. That was too much. The presents. The American Girl dolls alone cost more than I made in a month at the diner. They're my daughters. I'm allowed to spoil them on Christmas. You're trying to buy their love. That's not fair. Vincent set down the trash bag. I'm trying to give them the childhood I had, the security, the opportunities. Is that wrong? It's wrong when it makes them think love equals expensive gifts. It's wrong when it makes me look like the poor parent who can't compete. This isn't a competition, Charlotte. Then why does it feel like one? Her eyes filled with tears. I see the way they light up when you come home, how they run to you first now, how they talk about their daddy the CEO, their daddy who has a helicopter. I used to be enough for them. Now I'm just the sick mom who can't do anything fun. Vincent stepped closer. You're their mother. Nothing I do will ever change that, or compete with that. Yes, I can buy them things. But you gave them 5 years of love and stability when I was nowhere to be found. You're the one who taught them how to be kind, how to be brave. That's worth more than all my money combined. Then why are you fighting so hard to keep them? Because they're mine too. Because I missed 5 years and I'm not missing any more. Because... He paused, struggling with the words. Because somewhere in the past 2 months, you three became my whole world. This penthouse was just a place I slept before. Now it's home, and I don't want that to end. Charlotte wiped her eyes. I don't want it to end either. But Vincent, we can't keep living in this limbo. I'm healthy now. I need to figure out my life, and you need to figure out yours. Eventually, we need to decide what this actually is. What if, Vincent said carefully, we stopped thinking of this as temporary? What if this is just how we're doing it? Co-parenting under one roof, a family that doesn't look traditional but works anyway. You mean me living here indefinitely? As what? As my partner in raising our daughters, as someone I trust and respect. Does it need to be more complicated than that? Charlotte looked at him for a long moment. And when you meet someone, when you want to date, get married, have the life you actually planned, where do I fit then? It was a fair question. Vincent thought about the women he'd dated before, polished socialites who saw him as a trophy or a bank account. He thought about the loneliness of coming home to an empty penthouse. Then he thought about the past 2 months, chaotic breakfasts, the girls' laughter, Charlotte's quiet presence making everything feel less empty. I don't have that answer, he admitted. But I know I don't want to go back to how things were before. So can we just take it one day at a time? Stay. At least give it a real chance. Charlotte nodded slowly. One day at a time, but Vincent, eventually we're going to have to figure out the long-term plan, for everyone's sake. January brought new complications and new hopes. Charlotte was now strong enough to work part-time, and she'd found a position at a publishing house as an editorial assistant. It was entry-level, barely above minimum wage, but it was in her field and it was hers. The first day she came home with her employee ID badge, she'd cried happy tears. Vincent had found her in the bathroom, clutching that laminated card like it was made of gold. "It's just an ID badge," she'd said, embarrassed by her emotion. "It's proof you're alive, that you have a future, that cancer didn't win." He'd kissed her forehead. "You're allowed to cry about that." But working meant new challenges with the girls. Mrs. Rodriguez was there during the day, but mornings and evenings required coordination between Charlotte and Vincent. They developed schedules, trade-offs, compromises. Charlotte handled breakfast and school drop-off on her days off. Vincent took over evening routines on nights when Charlotte had to work late. They left each other notes on the kitchen counter. "Morgan needs her permission slip signed. Madison has a play date Tuesday. Don't forget, Morgan hates carrots now. Don't ask me why." It should have been awkward, two people who barely knew each other navigating the intimate choreography of shared parenting. But instead, they fell into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. Vincent found himself looking forward to their evening debriefs, when they'd sit with tea after the girls went to bed and compare notes on the day. Charlotte found herself watching for Vincent to come home, the girls' faces lighting up when they heard his key in the door. Her own heart doing a little flip she tried to ignore. One Wednesday evening in mid-January, Vincent came home from an emergency board meeting to find chaos. Madison was crying at the kitchen table, her spelling test with a red 75% circled at the top. Morgan sat in the corner, arms crossed, face blotchy from crying. Charlotte was trying to comfort both girls, while also on a work call about a manuscript deadline, her voice strained, clearly overwhelmed by trying to juggle everything at once. Vincent dropped his briefcase and took charge. He plucked the phone from Charlotte's hand, told her colleague she'd call back, and scooped up Madison. "Come on, spelling champion. Let's talk about this test." He sat with Madison at the kitchen table, while Charlotte dealt with Morgan's situation. "I'm stupid," Madison sobbed, her face buried in his suit jacket. "I tried so hard, but I got 5 wrong." 5 wrong out of how many? 20. "So, you got 15 right?" "That's 75%. That's pretty good for words like necessary and privilege. But I wanted perfect. You always say to do my best." Vincent pulled his daughter onto his lap, something that had become second nature now. "Your best doesn't mean perfect. It means trying hard and learning from mistakes. Did you learn which words you got wrong?" Madison nodded, sniffling. "Miss Wilson made me write them 5 times each." "Then you're already better than you were yesterday. That's what matters, not being perfect, but being better." He kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you. Every single day, even on days when you get spelling words wrong. Even on days when you spill orange juice on my laptop." Madison giggled, despite her tears. "You're still mad about that." "I'm not mad. Laptops can be replaced. Daughters can't." Later, after both girls were in bed, Charlotte found Vincent in his study, reviewing the very contracts he'd abandoned to help with homework. "Thank you for stepping in. I was drowning and you just knew exactly what to do." "That's what parents do. We tag team." Vincent set down his pen. "How's Morgan?" "Angry, hurt. A boy at school told her that everyone knows her mom almost died and that makes her family weird." Charlotte's voice cracked. "She asked me if it was true that we're weird." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that every family is different, and different doesn't mean weird or bad. It just means ours." I told her that lots of families have two homes or step-parents or adoptive parents, and we have one home with two parents who love her very much, even if we're not married. I think she accepted it, but Vincent, this is going to come up again. Kids can be cruel, and our situation is unconventional. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying Charlotte's face. She looked exhausted but beautiful in the soft desk lamplight. Her hair was longer now, healthier. The grey pallor of illness had been replaced by a rosy glow. She was alive and vibrant and sitting in his study like she belonged there, which, he realized with a start, she did. Then maybe we should make it less unconventional. What do you mean? Marry me. Charlotte laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. Her smile faded. You can't be serious. Why not? We're already living together, raising kids together. Marriage would give us legal protections, make things easier at school and doctors' offices. The girls would have stability. It solves multiple problems. Vincent, people don't get married to solve problems. They get married because they love each other. Do they? Plenty of marriages throughout history have been practical arrangements. Ours would be a business partnership focused on raising our daughters. It makes perfect logical sense. Charlotte stared at him, and he could see he'd said something wrong, but couldn't figure out what. That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard. I'm not a romantic person. I'm a practical one, and practically speaking, this makes sense. You wouldn't have to worry about custody arrangements or where you'll live or how you'll afford things. The girls would have stability. We work well together. Why not make it official? No. Charlotte stood up abruptly. Absolutely not. Why? Can you give me one logical reason why it's a bad idea? Because I won't marry someone who sees me as a problem to solve. Charlotte's voice rose. I won't marry someone who thinks I'm a convenient business arrangement. I deserve better than that. And frankly, so do you. She left before Vincent could respond. He sat alone in his study, genuinely confused by the rejection. Everything he'd said made perfect logical sense. They lived together well. They parented effectively as a team. Marriage would provide legal and social benefits. Where was the flaw in his reasoning? Patricia, who'd overheard the whole thing from the hallway, appeared in his doorway. Vincent Marcus Chambers, you are the stupidest intelligent person I've ever known. What did I do wrong? It was a reasonable proposal. You proposed a business arrangement to a woman who's been in love with you since you brought her home from the hospital. Vincent blinked. What? Oh, for heaven's sake, are you truly this blind? Oh! Charlotte looks at you like you hung the moon. She laughs at your terrible jokes. She lights up when you come home. She's been falling for you for months, and you just told her that marrying you would be a business transaction. But I didn't. I wasn't. Vincent struggled to process this. I was trying to make things easier for her by offering her a loveless marriage. Vincent, that woman has pride. She's already uncomfortable accepting your financial help. The last thing she wants is to be your charity wife. After Patricia left, Vincent sat in the dark, replaying the past months. Charlotte's smile when he managed to braid the girl's hair correctly. The way she touched his arm when making a point. How she always saved him the last cookie. The comfortable silences that had developed between them. Had she been falling for him while he'd been too focused on logistics to notice? And more importantly, what did he feel? He thought about coming home to an empty penthouse after Charlotte left, and the thought made him physically ill. He thought about some other man noticing her smile, her strength, her warmth. The jealousy that surged through him was answer enough. Somewhere in the chaos of playing house, Vincent had fallen in love with the mother of his children. And he'd been so busy being practical that he'd nearly ruined everything. The next morning, Vincent asked Patricia to watch the girls after school. He picked up Charlotte from work, ignoring her protests that she could take the subway. They drove to Central Park and walked along the paths where they'd taken the girls dozens of times. I'm sorry, Vincent said, about last night. My proposal was insulting. It's fine. You were trying to help in your Vincent way, logic and solutions. It's not fine. Patricia pointed out that I'm an idiot and she's right. Charlotte, can I tell you something? Sure. That night 6 years ago, I never forgot you. I tried to. I threw myself into work, dated other women, built my empire, but sometimes I'd remember how you smiled, or how you talked about your dreams of being an editor someday. I told myself it was just nostalgia, a pleasant memory. I never thought I'd see you again. Charlotte stopped walking. Why are you telling me this? Because when I got that call from Madison, when I saw you in that hospital bed, something clicked into place. Like a piece of me I didn't know was missing suddenly came home. And these past months, building this weird, unconventional family with you, have been the happiest of my life. Not because it's practical or convenient, but because you're in it. Vincent, I'm not done. I'm terrible at this, at feelings and romance and all the things that apparently matter, but I know I don't want to wake up without you in the next room. I know I love watching you with our daughters, how patient you are, how you always know the right thing to say. I know that somewhere between emergency rooms and breakfast chaos, I fell completely in love with you. And I'm hoping, maybe, you feel even a fraction of that for me. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. You really are an idiot. I know. Patricia told me extensively. I've been in love with you since you showed up at that hospital without hesitation, since you sat with me during chemo, since I watched you learn how to be a father in real time, making mistakes and trying anyway. I've been in love with you for months, terrified you'd figure it out and feel trapped. Vincent pulled her close. I'm not trapped. I'm exactly where I want to be, with you, with our girls, with this messy, complicated, perfect family we've made. He kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she responded. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying and laughing. So, Vincent said, let me try this again. Charlotte Hayes, will you marry me, not because it's practical or convenient, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out how to be worthy of you? Yes, Charlotte whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They walked back to the car, hand in hand, calling Patricia to share the news. His mother's delighted shriek was so loud they had to hold the phone away from their ears. When they got home, they sat the girls down for a serious talk. Girls, Mommy and Daddy have something important to tell you, Vincent began. We're going to get married. Which means Mommy will officially be part of our family forever. How do you feel about that? Madison and Morgan looked at each other, then at their parents. Then they launched themselves at both adults, screaming with joy. We get to be a real family, like in the storybooks. We were always a real family, Charlotte said, hugging them tight. But now we get to make it official. Morgan pulled back, suddenly serious. Does this mean we get to be flower girls? Because Anna in my class was a flower girl and she got to wear a princess dress. The princessiest dresses ever, Vincent promised. That night, after the girls were asleep, Vincent and Charlotte sat on the balcony overlooking the city. Charlotte leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders, and for the first time in months, everything felt settled. I need to tell you something, Charlotte said quietly, about that night 6 years ago. I didn't sleep with you expecting anything. But when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified and alone. I called your company and someone laughed at me. They said rich men deal with pregnancy claims all the time and I should pick someone more gullible to scam. I was humiliated. I thought you'd told them to say that. Vincent's jaw clenched. I'm going to find out who that was and fire them. It doesn't matter now, but I want you to understand why I didn't try harder. It wasn't just pride. I genuinely believed you didn't want to be found. I'm so sorry for being unavailable, for having people around me who would treat you that way. I can't fix the past 5 years, but I can make sure the next 50 are different. Charlotte smiled. 50 years. That's optimistic. I'm planning on at least 60, actually. You're stuck with me for the long haul, Charlotte Hayes. Or soon to be Charlotte Chambers, if you want. Or Charlotte Hayes Chambers, whatever makes you happy. What would make me happy is if you kissed me again. So he did. The wedding was planned for June, 6 months away. Charlotte wanted time to do it right, to include the girls in every decision, to make it a celebration rather than a rushed formality. Vincent would have married her the next day, but he was learning that compromise was part of love. February brought unexpected challenges. Vincent's business partner, Marcus, called an emergency meeting. A hostile takeover attempt was underway from a rival company. Vincent would need to be fully present, working 18-hour days, traveling for negotiations. It was the worst possible timing. "Go," Charlotte said when he tried to figure out how to balance work and family. "I can handle things here. We have Patricia and Mrs. Rodriguez. The girls and I will be fine." But I promised I wouldn't be an absent father." "You're not absent. You're providing for your family. That's different. Go save your company, but come home when you can." So Vincent threw himself back into the business world. But it was different now. He left meetings if Madison called with homework questions. He video chatted with Morgan before bed, even when he was in Singapore. He kept a picture of all 4 of them on his desk, taken at Christmas, and looked at it whenever someone suggested he was losing his edge. Marcus confronted him one evening after a particularly brutal negotiation. "You're different, softer." The old Vincent would have crushed them by now. "The old Vincent didn't have anything to lose except money," Vincent replied. "Now I have 3 people at home who need me to come back in one piece. That changes your perspective. Makes you weak. Makes me human. And frankly, I like this version better." The takeover attempt was defeated in March. Vincent's company emerged stronger, and he emerged with a renewed understanding of what mattered. He cut back his hours, promoted Marcus to handle more responsibilities, and restructured his priorities. The business would survive without him running everything. His family wouldn't. April brought wedding planning chaos. Madison and Morgan had strong opinions about everything. The flowers had to be pink and purple. The cake needed to have 5 layers. There had to be dancing, but not boring dancing, fun dancing. Charlotte and Patricia navigated these demands with patience, while Vincent mostly nodded and signed checks. One afternoon, while shopping for flower girl dresses, Morgan asked Charlotte a question that stopped everyone in their tracks. "Mummy, are you scared?" "Scared of what, baby?" "That the cancer will come back. That you'll die and leave us." Charlotte knelt down, meeting her daughter's eyes. "Sometimes I am scared, but you know what? I have doctors who check on me all the time, and even if I ever got sick again, which I probably won't, I have Daddy and Grandma Patricia and you and Madison to fight for. That makes me strong. Do you understand?" Morgan nodded, but her face was still anxious. Vincent knelt beside Charlotte. "Morgan, your mom is the bravest, strongest person I know. She beat cancer the doctor said was impossible to beat, and even if in some faraway future she got sick again, we'd all fight together. That's what families do. We don't face scary things alone anymore. None of us do." "Promise," Morgan whispered. "Promise," Vincent and Charlotte said together. May brought pre-wedding jitters. Charlotte, looking at herself in her wedding dress fitting, had a moment of panic. What if this is a mistake? What if we're moving too fast? It's only been 8 months since we met. People take longer to buy cars. Patricia, who was with her, raised an eyebrow. "You've known him for 6 years. You have twin 5-year-olds together. That ship has sailed, darling." "But what if he realizes he made a mistake? What if he wakes up one day and resents being trapped with his one-night stand and her baggage?" "That woman in the mirror is not baggage. She's a warrior. She's a mother. She's a brilliant editor who just got promoted. And she's marrying a man who looks at her like she's the only woman in the world. Vincent chose you, Charlotte. Every single day he chooses you. Trust that." The night before the wedding, Vincent found Charlotte on their balcony, unable to sleep. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Cold feet?" "Frozen," she admitted. "Vincent, what if I can't do this? What if I'm not good at being a CEO's wife? I don't know how to navigate your world." "Then we'll figure it out together. Charlotte, I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm asking you to be exactly who you've always been, just with my ring on your finger." He tilted her chin up. "You're the strongest person I know. You raised 2 children alone while dying of cancer. You can handle a few charity galas and business dinners. When you put it that way, it sounds manageable. That's because it is. And if anyone in my world has a problem with you, they can answer to me." Charlotte smiled. "My knight in expensive suits. Always." The wedding day arrived with perfect June weather. The ceremony was held in the gardens of Vincent's country estate, a property Charlotte hadn't even known he owned. 200 guests filled white chairs, but Charlotte only saw 4 faces: Madison and Morgan in their princess dresses walking down the aisle ahead of her, Patricia crying happy tears in the front row, and Vincent at the altar in a teal suit looking at her like she was his entire world. Madison and Morgan stood with them during the ceremony, because this wasn't just about 2 people joining together. It was about 4 people becoming an official family. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Madison raised her hand. The guests laughed nervously. "Yes, Madison?" the officiant asked, smiling. "I don't object, but I want to say something. Mommy and Daddy, thank you for fighting for us. Thank you for being brave when we were scared. We love you so much." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Vincent had to pause to compose himself before he could say his vows. "Charlotte, 6 years ago I met you and I thought you were just a moment in my life, a pleasant memory. I was wrong. You were the beginning of my real life, even if I was too blind to see it. You gave me 2 incredible daughters. You gave me purpose and love and a reason to be better than I was. I promise to spend the rest of my life worthy of the gift you've given me. I promise to be the partner you deserve, the father our daughters need, and the man who shows up, always." Charlotte's vows were equally emotional. "Vincent, when I called you that terrifying morning, I thought I was asking a stranger to save my children. Instead, you saved all of us. You gave us a home, a family, and a love I never thought I'd find. I promise to be your partner in everything, to challenge you when you're too logical and support you when you're vulnerable, to build this beautiful, messy, perfect life with you, one day at a time." When they kissed, Madison and Morgan cheered so loudly they drowned out the applause. At the reception, the girls insisted on making speeches. Morgan's was short and sweet. "I love my mommy and daddy, and I'm glad we're all together now." Madison's was longer and had the guests laughing and crying in equal measure. "When Mommy got sick, I was really scared. I thought we'd be alone forever. But then I called Daddy and he came. He didn't know us, but he came anyway. That's what heroes do. My daddy is a hero, and my mommy is a superhero because she beat cancer. And now we're a family, and that's the best thing in the whole world." The guests erupted in applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. Vincent pulled both girls into a hug, while Charlotte watched with a full heart. Later, during their first dance, Charlotte laid her head on Vincent's chest. "Are you happy? Really happy?" "I've never been happier in my entire life. We have our girls, we have each other, we have a future I never dreamed possible. It's more than I ever hoped for, too." Vincent laughed, pulling her closer. "A year ago, I didn't even know you existed. Now I can't imagine life without you. Life has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? The best way." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of dancing, toasts, and celebration. When it was finally over and the guests had left, Vincent and Charlotte stood in the garden with Madison and Morgan, now changed into comfortable clothes. The girls were eating leftover cake, frosting on their faces. "Best day ever," Morgan declared. Agreed, Vincent said, kissing the top of Charlotte's head. Best day ever. 1 year later, Charlotte stood in the doorway of the twins' bedroom, watching Vincent read them a bedtime story. They were 6 now, growing so fast it made her heart ache with both pride and a touch of melancholy. Time was passing, and every day they grew a little more independent, needed her a little less, but they also grew more confident, more themselves, and that was everything she'd fought for. Madison was snuggled under Vincent's left arm, Morgan under his right, both hanging on every word of the adventure he was reading. He was doing different voices for each character, making the girls giggle with his ridiculous pirate accent. Charlotte leaned against the doorframe, her hand unconsciously moving to the spot where doctors had once found terminal cancer. Today had been her 1-year scan. Clear, completely clear. Doctor. Ramirez had called her his favorite miracle, though she knew the real miracle was standing in this room. Mommy, Morgan spotted her. Come listen, Daddy's doing all the voices. Charlotte joined them on the bed, completing their circle. Vincent continued reading, making ridiculous voices that had the girls giggling. His pirate sounded like a bad impression of someone gargling marbles, and his princess voice was comically high-pitched. Madison and Morgan were in hysterics, and Charlotte found herself laughing too, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. When he finished, Madison looked up at him seriously, the way she did when she was processing something important. Daddy, do you remember when you didn't know us? Vincent's eyes met Charlotte's over the girls' heads, a moment of silent communication passing between them. I do, sweetheart. I'm glad that's over. I don't want to remember the time before we were a family. Me neither, Morgan agreed quickly. Even the scary parts were worth it because we got you, and because Mommy got better. Mrs. Rodriguez says we're blessed. Mrs. Rodriguez is right, Vincent said softly. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. Prick. Vincent pulled all 3 of his girls closer. You know what? Every single hard thing we went through led us here, to this moment, and I wouldn't change a second of it, because it brought us together. Later, after the girls finally fell asleep, Vincent found Charlotte on their balcony, looking out over the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. How different life is from what I expected. 1.5 years ago, I was dying in a hospital bed, terrified of leaving my daughters alone. Now I'm healthy, married to an amazing man, and our girls are thriving. It feels like a dream. It's real, all of it. Vincent turned her to face him. Charlotte, I got the final adoption papers today. Madison and Morgan are legally mine. No one can ever question it or take them away. Fresh tears spilled down Charlotte's face. You did that. I wanted it official. Wanted them to know that they're mine in every possible way. Legally, emotionally, completely. They're my daughters, and you're my wife, and this is my family. Forever. Charlotte kissed him, deep and grateful and full of love. When they pulled apart, she was smiling through her tears. You know what's funny? That night 6 years ago, I thought you were just a handsome stranger who made me feel special for a few hours. I never imagined you'd become my entire world. I was an idiot 6 years ago, focused on all the wrong things, but somehow the universe gave me a second chance, gave us all a second chance. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Inside, their daughters slept safely, dreaming whatever dreams 6-year-olds dream. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility and promise. Vincent, Charlotte said softly, thank you for showing up that day, for not running away, for choosing us every single day since. Charlotte, you saved me just as much as I saved you. Before you, I had success, but no purpose. Money, but no meaning. You and the girls gave me something worth living for. He paused, then smiled. Although I have to say, Madison calling me on my personal cell was probably the best business decision I never made. Charlotte laughed. She has good instincts, that one. She gets that from her mother. A sound from inside made them turn. Madison stood in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit clutched in one hand. I had a bad dream. Can I sleep with you? Before they could answer, Morgan appeared behind her sister. Me too. I wasn't having a bad dream, but if Madison gets to sleep in your bed, I want to too. Vincent and Charlotte exchanged amused glances. Come on then, Vincent said, scooping up both girls. Family sleepover. They all piled into the master bed, girls in the middle, parents on either side. Madison reached for Charlotte's hand, while Morgan snuggled into Vincent's chest. Within minutes, both girls were breathing deeply, fast asleep. Vincent looked across the twins at his wife. Even in the dim light, he could see the contentment on her face, the peace that had replaced the fear and pain. She'd fought death and won. She'd fought to give her daughters a better life. And somehow, in the process, she'd given him one too. I love you, he mouthed silently. I love you too, she mouthed back. Outside, the city never slept, always moving, always changing. But here, in this moment, time seemed to stand still. A father who'd learned what mattered most. A mother who'd survived the impossible. Two little girls who'd called for help and found a hero. A family that shouldn't have existed, but somehow became exactly what each of them needed. 3 years later, on Madison and Morgan's 9th birthday, they gathered in the same garden where Vincent and Charlotte had married. Patricia was there, older now but still vibrant, laughing as she helped the girls open presents. Mrs. Rodriguez had baked a spectacular cake. Sophia, now in college, had come home for the celebration. Vincent stood back watching his family and felt that familiar surge of gratitude that still hit him at unexpected moments. Charlotte appeared at his side, sliding her hand into his. "What are you thinking?" she asked, though she probably knew. "About how perfect this is, how lucky we are, how everything we went through led us here." Lucky? Charlotte raised an eyebrow, a playful smile on her lips. "I almost died. You got ambushed with instant fatherhood. The girls spent months terrified. That's not exactly luck. But we made it through. We found each other. And look at them." He gestured to Madison and Morgan, who were now staging an elaborate pretend play with their new gifts, their voices carrying across the garden in excited squeals. They're happy, secure, loved. They don't remember the fear anymore, just the love that came after. That's everything. Charlotte leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You're right. We did make it through, together, and that makes all the difference." Madison called out, her voice bright with excitement. "Daddy, Mommy, come see what Grandma Patricia got us. It's the best present ever." They walked over hand in hand, joining the celebration. The girls had received art supplies, books, science kits, everything they'd asked for and more. But what made Vincent's chest tight with emotion was seeing how they naturally shared everything, how they included everyone in their joy, how they'd grown into confident, kind, extraordinary children. That evening, after everyone had left and the girls were finally in bed, exhausted from excitement, Vincent and Charlotte returned to their balcony. It had become their spot, their place to reflect and connect at the end of long days. "Charlotte," Vincent said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I got you something. It's not my birthday. I know, but today marks 3 years since I first walked into that hospital room. 3 years since my life changed forever. Open it." And inside was a delicate necklace with 3 intertwined circles. Charlotte's breath caught. "One for Madison, one for Morgan, one for us," Vincent explained. "Our family, unbreakable." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears as he fastened it around her neck. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole beautiful, messy, imperfect, perfect life is perfect." They kissed as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside, their daughters slept safely. Around them, The life they'd built together hummed with contentment. Vincent Chambers, the CEO who'd thought success meant corner offices and profit margins, had learned that real success meant this: coming home to the people who loved him, making breakfast on Saturday mornings, reading bedtime stories with silly voices, holding his wife while their daughters dreamed. Charlotte Hayes Chambers, the woman who'd faced death and refused to surrender, had learned that survival wasn't just about beating cancer. It was about fighting for the life you wanted, even when every odd was against you. It was about trusting that sometimes the universe conspires to give you exactly what you need, even if you didn't know you needed it. And Madison and Morgan, the brave little girls who'd made that phone call one terrifying morning, had learned that family wasn't just about biology. It was about people who showed up, who stayed, who loved you through the scary parts and celebrated with you through the joyful ones. As night fell over the city, the Chambers family slept peacefully. 4 people who'd found each other through tragedy and chance, who'd built something beautiful from broken pieces, who'd proven that love wasn't always planned or perfect, but it was always worth fighting for. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. Breakfast and laughter, homework and hugs, the ordinary magic of being a family. Not the family any of them had planned, but the family each of them had needed all along.